Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Macmillan Education Iberia In Focus event for Ready for B2 First. My name is Louise Connolly, and I'm the events manager at Macmillan Education Iberia. And I'm delighted that you could all be here with us this morning. I thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here with us. I know that this has been a very difficult and challenging year for everybody, and I just want to say thank you to you all and well done for keeping classes going. Before I introduce our speaker, Roy Norris, who is the author of the 4th edition of Ready for B2 First, I would like to explain a couple of things about how the event is going to work this morning. During Roy's talk, you will have the opportunity to interact with Roy. We will launch what we call a Have Your Say, which is an open-ended question. This will appear in a window on your screen, and all you have to do is write a short answer in reply to the question. Also, at the end of Roy's talk, you will be able to send in comments and ask questions about the content of the talk. Again, this will appear as a window on your screen, so please do send in any comments or questions that you have for Roy. After Roy's talk, I will introduce my colleague, Sarah Collins, sales representative at Macmillan Education Iberia, and she will give us a short presentation of the 4th edition for Ready for B2 First. At the end of her presentation, again, we will give you the opportunity to ask any questions or send in any comments, again, through the chat box. We will record today's event, and we will send you the recording and the handout for Roy's talk, as well as a certificate of attendance. We will do this next week. At the end of the event, I will invite you to take part in a short Survey Monkey questionnaire. There are questions there about the event, about Roy's talk, and also if you're interested in finding out more about the 4th edition of the Ready for B2 First course, there's a question there, so please do take part in this survey. We really want to hear from you. We value your opinion, and it's going to help us to improve future events that we organize. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Roy Norris. Good morning, Roy. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here today. It's a real pleasure. Roy worked for many years as a teacher and a teacher trainer at IH Madrid. He has been writing for Macmillan Education since 1999. He is the author of Ready for B2 First, now in its 4th edition, Straight to First, and co-author of Ready for Advanced. And his talk this morning is called Building Confidence for Use of English in the B2 First exam. So over to you, Roy.
Right. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining. I'm just clicking a few buttons here. I'll just start by saying the challenges of talks like this are that, for example, my neighbours 2 floors below are having a new kitchen installed. Fortunately, the builder's not doing any thumping and banging at the moment, but if they do, I'll put on some earphones to try and cancel out the noise as much as possible. Anyway, the talk here, Building Confidence for Use of English. The structure of the talk is very simple. I'm going to look at all 4 parts of the use of English paper, or the part of the reading and use of English paper. In turn, I'm going to look at how the tasks are constructed and what words, what phrases, what structures are tested. Because I think that's an important part of giving confidence to students. If they know what's being tested, that's very, very important for their confidence. It's not just a random set of structures and words that are being tested. And then we'll look at activities which will help prepare them for the exam. There'll be a handout, which I'll talk about in a minute. I'd just like to send a word to the coordinators here. I can't see myself on the screen. I don't know if that's possible, that I could see myself speaking, but if not, it doesn't matter too much. Okay, so we'll start here with part one, multiple choice cloze. And let's begin by looking at the handbook, the Cambridge handbook for the reading and use of English paper. This is some general advice they give right at the beginning of the handbook, which says your students should be encouraged to read a wide range of texts, both in class and at home, so that they build up a broad vocabulary and become familiar with the many uses of different structures. Why? Well, this should enable them to deal with a range of lexical items and grammatical structures in a variety of text types. And it's very, very true. The more they read, the more exposure they have to language, and the better prepared they'll be for all parts of the use of English section of the reading and use of English paper. However, you know and I know that students don't have a lot of time, don't read very much at home. They don't have time, in fact. We often we throw our hands up and say, oh, students don't read for themselves. They don't have time. I have two daughters, 16 and 19, and both. One has been through the Spanish education system. The other one is currently in Primero de Bachillerato, and she has no time. She's constantly preparing for exams. When she's finished one exam, it's the next exam. So what I'm going to propose throughout this talk is the extra reading at home is using the course book to the full, to try and exploit the course book as much as possible beyond the exercises that are actually in the course book. Use the texts that are there. So students don't perceive it as extra work, it's actually part of the course. And as we go through the talk, you'll see how I do that, how to exploit those reading texts. Okay, multiple choice cloze. Specifically, this is from the handbook again. The reference is at the bottom, the page number, but it's there for you to look at how to prepare students multiple choice cloze. And it says the kind of words that are tested. It says some questions test at a phrasal level. So words which are part of phrases, collocations, set phrases, phrasal verbs as well, of course. Other questions test meaning at sentence level or beyond, not just in the sentence, but perhaps in the context of the whole text. And we'll look at a couple of examples of each of these in a minute. And then another one is a lexical grammatical element may be involved, such as when candidates have to choose the option which fits correctly with a following prepositional verb form. Again, we'll have a look at that. Now, let's have a look at the phrasal level. This is very interesting because this is a multiple choice cloze. These are the answers for one of the sample papers in the First for Schools handbook, page 12. And all 8 items form part of phrases. It's very interesting to see this. The words which students have to choose are the ones which are underlined and in bold. The gave, the out, the enrolled, etc. But if you look through that, you can see collocations, for example, to gave his first public performance. Further down, attracted attention, gain experience, lead roles. There's a phrasal verb there helping out. And there's these reflexive verbs. Enrolled himself in ballet classes, also a collocation. Set himself a goal, also a collocation of. So this particular one is very useful for pointing out to students just how important phrases are. We'll say a little bit more about phrases in a minute. Another type of question is the meaning at sentence level and beyond. This is a text again from the First for Schools handbook. A couple of examples there. This is a text about dinosaurs. Dinosaurs regulate. This is not part of a phrase, but did they combine, gather, concentrate, or unite? So they gathered. United in this context, in the context of the whole text, is not relevant. Dinosaurs, well, they meet maybe for a common purpose, but united is usually used to talk about people gathering together for a common purpose. So dinosaurs don't unite, they gather. The conditions here were perfect. Conditions, not arrangements, for example. Nobody's arranging anything. So in this particular context, the meaning we want is conditions. Arrangements wouldn't be applicable here in this particular context. So no phrase, but words tested for their meaning and the context. And the next one, the final one, is this idea of lexicogrammatical, the idea of a mixture of lexis and grammar. It concerns family history, again, from the handbook. These are all examples from the handbook. Instead, rather, except, sooner than. Well, instead of, no, that's not right. Rather than, well, that's the answer. Except for, so that's not going to work. Sooner than works grammatically, but it's not a preference here, so we can't use it in this particular context. And then the one below, tracing your family history can also cause, mean, well, no, they're transitive verbs, they don't need a preposition. Result in, that's the answer. Lead to, so that's ruled out for that reason. So those are the three types of words that are tested. Important that you know that as a teacher, so you know you can transmit that to your students. You know which words to look out for when you're in your classes, which words might be tested in this kind of exercise. And also for your students to have some kind of knowledge of what types of words are tested, to give them confidence, the phrasal level, the meaning, and the grammatical aspects as well. You could use these same texts that I've used. They're there in the handbooks for you to use. There's a handout. Now, you'll be sent the handout, and in the handout, there are 20 pages of activities. The first 14 pages are all multiple choice closes. Now, let me just make sure we are clear about what they are. What I've done is I've taken 3 texts from Ready for B2 First, the new edition. And here's an example. This is the first text from Unit 1. This is a similar text to the one that was in the 3rd edition, but I've changed a couple of the texts in it. 2 are the same as before, 2 are new. It's a multiple matching reading. And these kind of texts are short enough to be able to create multiple choice cloze activities out of them. The idea, well, let me just show you what I've created for this. There is, for example, the first text is Lucas Martin. If we go back, you can see Lucas Martin is that first person television and stage actor, and there is the text with a multiple choice cloze created. Then there's the next one, Maya Anderson, Rio Tanaka, and then the 4th one there as well. And then it goes on. There's another text after that I've done it for, and there are more and more. There are 14 pages of these. Now, please, the idea behind this is not to say, oh, we just got a handout with 14 multiple choice closes. Here you are, students, can you go away and do these? This will help you for the exam, because it won't. Doing lots and lots of these multiple choice closes is not necessarily going to help your students for the exam. What I'm doing here is I'm suggesting that these can be used later, after you've exploited the reading text, to show students the relation between what they read and what's tested in the exam. The first one here is, sorry, what I wanted to say was, with this first text, which had those 4 people there, is that in the course book, there's a language focus section which focuses on habitual behaviour. There's also a phrasal verb exercises. These 4 texts contain 10 phrasal verbs, and what students have to do in the book is to look for those phrasal verbs in the texts and work out their meaning from context. So what I'm suggesting to you is that these multiple choice closes can be given to students for revision at a later point. That can be done in the class or at home, and then they can check their own answers in the text. But it's after and only after they've exploited and you've exploited the text as much as possible for all the language that's in that text. There is then a connection between the work they're doing in the multiple choice cloze and what they've read in the classroom. So we're using our course book for supplementary activity, further exam preparation, and giving them a chance to deal with the text to its full. Okay, here's the first one, Simon. I wanted to show you, the kind of words. Beware if you, the point I want to make is to encourage you to do this yourselves with other texts as well. I've done it for 3 of the texts. You can do it for more text. Part 7 multiple matching text work particularly well with this. And if you're not using Ready for B2 first, then at least you can see the kind of words that are tested, and you can apply that to your own, the course book you are using. Yeah, don't just say, just give them all these 14 multiple choice closes, unless you're actually using Ready for B2 first. The kind of words that are not tested are complex. Well, kind of be careful. The words above beyond the level, profusely wouldn't be tested, for example, at B2. Battled probably wouldn't be tested at B2 first. And outrage certainly wouldn't. They're more C1, C2 words. Struggle there is a possibility, might be, but I've chosen to focus on other words there to test those items. So have a look. These are the ones that I've got there. Emphasis was placed on, got in the way of, no matter what, in the height of summer. They're all parts of longer phrases, and they're not particularly complex words. Place, way, matter, height. In the second paragraph, they didn't let us drink. There's a nice lexicogrammatical element. Allow wouldn't be, or permit wouldn't work there, because they would require an infinitive with to. Let's take a drink of water. As I did there, my daughter goes to the same school as I went to. A bit of grammar there. Did instead of went to, with a substitution. We're asked to provide her with. Give her with? No, provide her with. And improves concentration there. Parts of phrases, yeah, that's what I've gone for. And then if you look at actually the answers there, the other words that I've used and the answers, again, make this point that the words are not complex words. They're words that they've seen before. Place, way, matter, height, let, did, provide, improve. So if you're writing your own exercises, given the tools that you've got, that you know what kinds of words are tested, make sure you go for words which are within the level there, and if you're applying it to another course book as well. Okay, so just before I move on, please don't just give 14 multiple choice closes to your students. They should form part of revision, having exploited the text firstly to the full, and then doing that as a later support to show that connection between what they read and what they're tested on in the exam. And that will give them help to increase their confidence. Okay, just this final point about general preparation before I move on to open close. Students should develop an efficient personal system for recording the new vocabulary they learn. They should record as much detail as possible. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. In fact, I'm going to come back to this later as to a possible type of vocabulary record. Students, I am at the moment studying German. I studied German at university, had a long period of time where I actually taught it at one point, and now I've come back to it. I'm probably a kind of B2, C1 level. And I have a very, very full vocabulary record. And I'm going to share with you a kind of a technique that I use for recording vocabulary for my German, which I think helps and I think will help your students. So we'll come back to that later. Very, very important way of building confidence for all parts of the exam. All right, I'll just take another sip of water. Tickly cough. Right, open close, types of words. Now, if you look in Ready for B2 First and Straight to First, the other first B2 First book that I've written, you'll see exercises like this. This is a supplementary one. It's an extra one. It's not in any course book, so you can use this if you want to show students the kind of words that are tested. So you've got, let's just give you the answers there. There we are, prepositions and phrasal verbs, conjunctions and negatives, relative pronouns, auxiliary verbs, articles and determiners, set phrases, all the best, part of a phrase, pronouns, and then this one which is interesting, verbs, not to be underestimated, because it's not just small grammar words that are tested or that are, that you have to write in this part of the paper. There could be full content verbs. such as the ones there, give or know. In fact, if I show you these are examples from Cambridge Handbook and Cambridge Practice Tests. And you'll see that these are words, this is not the multiple choice cloze, this is the open cloze. And these are words that students were expected, or candidates were expected, to put in the gap. You can see there that a lot of them, well, there's phrasal verbs there. A lot of them are the kind of verbs that are used in phrasal verbs, which are verbs like put, make, give, come, bring, take. Those kind of verbs are often required. They're fairly common verbs. And this one I found from the 3 of the last 4 items tested all required a verb: spends, take part in, and have experiences or enjoy experiences. So they can be quite frequent, 3 in one text there. So don't underestimate that as a possibility. So before I move on, yes, that's looking at the words, once again, making this point, being aware of what's tested will help confidence. I also want to point out the difficulty of the open cloze. Here's an example of one which I think is very difficult. Students are expected to write the word making. We've got besides making learning more fun. Why is it difficult? Well, because it's a verb, main verb, making. It's in the gerund. And you've got 2 gerunds there, 2 ing forms, making learning, which students might think is a bit strange. It's a gerund because it's after a preposition besides, which is often used as a discourse marker, a linker, if you like, which links this sentence with the previous sentence. But here that's not the case. Besides is used as a preposition. It requires a gerund of a full verb, and that gerund comes before another gerund. It's tricky. Yeah? It's not easy. I would just like to say, actually, in brackets, that I do have a section on this. It's the very last grammar point of Ready for B2 First, where I deal with words like despite, besides, despite, as a result of, words which are often used as linkers, discourse markers, being used as prepositions. Anyway, moving on. This one as well, difficult. Why? Because drifts, it's not a verb they're going to know, really. And if they don't know the meaning of the verb, they're going to have to, how are they going to get the word in the gap? Well, they're going to have to guess the meaning from context. The next one, stretch out in front. They might know stretch, they might not. But what's weird here is that we've got out and in together. So that adds a level of difficulty. Out and in, out in. What's going on here? If you haven't got the word in front of you in the exam, then if you don't know the answer and you've got stretch out in, what's going on? You might be thinking, and that makes it difficult. Yeah. This last one, although, well, yes, it's a common word, isn't it? But you need to read to the end of the sentence. You need to understand it in the context of the whole text. And those are the words which often cause problems. And anywhere there, which is a word which means any other. I've never had anywhere else I've been to. Never had another place that I have been to. It's one word which encapsulates more than one idea, makes it difficult. And before I'm showing you the level of difficulty, because I think it's important to understand that students shouldn't lose confidence. We're talking about building confidence, but I think they shouldn't lose confidence if they don't get full marks, if they don't get 100% in the use of English or any paper for that matter. Because don't forget, if you're getting 100%, or if you're getting everything right, then you're perhaps doing the wrong exam. You should be in the level above. And the marks, we don't know the exact percentages for the breakup points, but from 160 to 190 is a pass. From 180 to 190 is an A grade. And if you're getting an A grade, you've got a C1 level. So there's a lot of margin there for error. Students don't have to be perfect. And it's perfectly normal to find this some of these confusing. Of course, we'd love them to get full marks, but they shouldn't lose confidence if there are a couple which they can't get. Okay? That's an important point, I think, to make. Just coming back to this stretch out in, I mean, it's really a question of knowing where the boundaries of the phrases are. We've spoken about phrases before. Stretching out, it's stretch out in front of me. It's not stretch out in and then whatever comes next. It's recognizing where the boundaries of those phrases are. So much like the multiple choice cloze, you could take an example from the handbook, as I'm doing here, and get students, once they've done the task, to identify where the phrase or the longer structure is. What is actually being said. It's not just one word in isolation, which depends on the word before and maybe the one after. It often depends on a whole phrase. So this is a very good text for highlighting that to students, to show them that often words form part of longer phrases and they need to look before and after. You can see as I'm talking, I'm sure you're looking at these, had used it in cooking since Greek and Roman times. Yeah, the past perfect with since there. This took a long time. It's a phrase. It's a longer item. Westwards rather than eastwards. He set off from Spain. It goes on. Columbus didn't succeed in finding the Spice Islands, but he did manage to find the Americas. The 13 he did manage, depends on their understanding of what's gone before, their reading of the previous part of the sentence. Came across soon after for sale. Get them to, as an awareness raiser, get them to highlight where the phrase, underline those phrases once they've done the exercise, or when they're doing the exercise, even better. Okay, that's in the handbook for you to use yourselves. Another exercise, this one's in the handbook. I'll explain what the purpose of this is in a minute. I'm not throwing this open to you yet. I'll just deal with it myself. But we enjoyed the holiday, but sometimes it was windy by the seaside. Now, what words could fit in there? Well, it could be very, it could be quite, it could be so, it could be extremely, it could be several words like this, which grade the word windy. Next one, our room overlooked the motorway, so it was very noisy. It was a good hotel. Well, from the first part of the sentence, it looks pretty negative, doesn't it? So let's put a negative word in there. It was not a good hotel. That seems to work. I thanked her very much for the jumper. It was the right size, just the right size, exactly the right size. Seems to fit in. So, as I say, this is in the handbook. You can give this exercise to your students. Why? Well, because there are two exercises. This is the first part. I think there are 8 items altogether, if my memory serves me well. But then they do the next exercise. This is another version of the first one. There's the first answer we had before. But look below. We enjoyed the holiday, but sometimes it was windy by the seaside that we could hardly walk. So there, the answer, because of what follows, is so. It changes it completely. And this is in response to some advice from Cambridge, which is in the handbook. As in part 1, candidates need to read the words which follow the gap as well as those which come before it. Okay? And we'll look at the other two. It was not a good hotel. Well, actually, look, our room overlooked the motorway, so it was very noisy. It was a good hotel, though, that we decided to stay there again next year. It was such a good hotel. And the third one, I thanked her very much for the jumper. It was the right size. However, so I asked her if she could change it for me. Becomes not. So it's to show students the importance of reading beyond the gap right to the end of the sentence, often the sentence before, or sometimes the sentence before and afterwards as well, to make sure they're getting the right answer. Okay. Now, sorry, I'm just clicking buttons here. That's in the handbook. Right, part 3, word formation. Once again, what kind of words are tested? Well, there's a page from Ready for B2 first. The point I want to make here is that I think you need a systematic approach to the teaching of the kind of affixation which occurs in the exam. In fact, that was some advice that used to be given in an older version of the handbook. It's no longer there, but I still think it's very, very important that your course book gives you a systematic approach. This is actually from Unit 3, a section on nouns. And I'll just move that over to the left because in Unit 4, we've got a section on participle adjectives and adverbs. In Unit 9, there's a section on adverbs, and in other parts of the course, there's a section on adjectives, another section on nouns, there's a section on prefixes for negatives and so on. And there's another section on verbs. Verbs don't feature very much in B2 first word formation. They do at a little bit more in advance, but in B2 first, it tends to be the EN prefix, so encourage or ensure, or the EN suffix, so to widen or to lengthen. And there is a section on that as well. So there is, throughout the course, there needs to be a gradual build-up of the types of words that are tested to give students that confidence. And then, if I'm pointing out there that there's a section on participle adjectives and adverbs, but it's not the only one. There's one later in the book. This is a text which we've kept on from the 3rd edition, and we had a bit of space to fill. It could have been a visual we put in there, but I noticed in the text that there were a lot of participle adjectives and adverbs, the kind of surprising, disappointed, surprisingly as well, that adverb which is often tested in word formation exercises. So I exploited the text. There's me doing what I'm asking you to do, is to exploit your text to the full. And this particular one lent itself beautifully to an exercise on participle adjectives and adverbs. So it's a nice bit of revision. The first time we saw it was Unit 4. Here in Unit 10, they've got another bite at the apple there. And once again, I'm going to suggest you do this or look for opportunities to do this as well. And here is a text that we're going to look at now to see how we can do that. I would just say that not all texts lend themselves to this kind of exercise. Don't be surprised if you come up against the text and think, I can't do anything with this. There's nothing really here I can pull out. It's just a question of looking and being aware all the time of what you're looking for and looking for those opportunities. In this talk and in the handout, I'm giving you some of those opportunities, but there are more there to be had, which you can look for yourselves. This is a text about a gap year. It's a woman called Rosie Casterton, who's actually the daughter of a friend of mine, a person I first met 45 years ago, I think, 45 years ago at university, the very first day of university, and here we are, still friends, and I'm interviewing his daughter who came to Spain recently. She's left now. She was here for a couple of years teaching out in Boadilla to the west of Madrid, and she told me she'd done a gap year and she had a very interesting story to tell, so I grabbed her and interviewed her, and we created this text out of it. The trip of a lifetime. It really is a trip of a lifetime she went on. Anyway, first paragraph. Here is the first paragraph of the text. And I'm looking through, I felt slightly ashamed when my exam results came out, she says. Now, ashamed, there's a word I could use. I've never seen it tested in an exam, but why not? It's certainly a word that students could deal with. So I'll take that word out, I'll put shame at the end, and then see if they can put the right form of the word in. Now I'm just going to have a little rest from talking and let you read through. I'd like you to read through the text there and pick out words that you think you could test in the same way, where you gap it and then put the stem in capital letters at the end of the line. Have a look and see which words. You don't need to write them in or tell me, just keep it to yourselves and we'll talk about it in a minute. Okay, right, now, these I'm just going to put up on the screen the words that I've chosen for my exercise. It doesn't mean to say they're the only words, but I think they're fairly obvious words that you could test. And did you pick out these ones? Ashamed, respectable, admissions, And then what's interesting here is requirements, achievements, disappointment. Isn't that nice? 3 words, and completely unintentional when I wrote this. But there they are. 3 nouns were ending in ment, and 2 of them were plurals. So lovely. We're just ready to be tested. And then the following at the end. And then you can create, and you may have had other words as well. I'm actually not sure which ones, but maybe different perhaps. Reconsider, but unlikely in the exam. But it doesn't matter. You can choose. Remember, this exercise, this type of exercise, comes after you've exploited the text for whatever else is in the book and whatever else you want to do. So you've dealt with the text, you've highlighted aspects of language, maybe students have asked you questions about language, maybe the course book has an exercise which focuses on an aspect of language, and then you can come back to this at a later time and deal with, give some revision and say, look, hey, look, did you notice in the text there are some words which might be tested in the exam? And that's the exercise you can create. Yeah, that's what it looks like. It takes a little bit of time. Okay, you have to write out the text, you have to decide the words, you gap it, you put the words there. But once you've done it, you've got it forever. Well, as long as you're teaching and as long as you're using the course book. But it's there once it's done. The initial work, yes, it takes time, but it's worth it because you've got that for future, and it really does help your students' confidence, which is what we're talking about here. And there are the answers. Okay, have a look down. And maybe as you look through the answers, you can see a little bit of a problem. And yes, there is a problem with 3 of the words, these 3 here. Now, I've done that on purpose, but, maybe students would do that as well. Sometimes they do. You've got the wrong spelling. Missions should have 2 S's. Achievements, I got the I and the E round the wrong way. And disappointment, despite the fact that it says 1 S and 2 P's in the stem word, students often, not all students, of course, but some students will put 2 S's on 1 P because that's what they always do. And native speakers of English do that as well. So the point here is that spelling is a feature, is an aspect we need to address, because if you spell the word incorrectly, you get nothing, no points at all. So in the handbook, there is an exercise. You may have seen this before. If you've seen me speak before about this, this is an exercise I've spoken about before. I've been using it many years, and I've adapted it and added to it. And this is the latest version. This is just 5. There are 22 items altogether. They're arranged as 2 exercises, one on adjectives, one on nouns. And there are groups of 4. One of the words is incorrectly spelled. So in the first line, which word is it? Yes, it's competitive. In the second line, yeah, foggy. Third line, typical mistake, not only in Spain, but other countries such as Italy. I know this is also a problem. Responsible. Next one is hard, actually. You look at it and they all look correct. Which one is the wrong one? Well, it's influential. Many people would get that wrong, and I have to look at it twice. I think, and I actually checked it in the dictionary just because I got a bit nervous. I thought, is it a C or a T? It's a T. Yeah, so that's not so easy. Numerous, dangerous, generous, disastrous. In fact, yesterday, I was reading something in the news. Oh, yes, it was in a newspaper, and the word definitely was spelled incorrectly. DEFINATELY. Oh, dear. Some of these words are incorrectly spelled by native speakers as well. Anyway, there's an exercise in the handout on spelling. Draw your students' attention to it. It might not build their confidence. It might make them feel a bit uneasy, actually, about their own spelling abilities. But it has to be dealt with. It has to be addressed. And I've focused on words which are commonly misspelt, like responsible, for example. So that's an exercise you can do once, twice, more times if you want to with your students, or get them to do it many times. Okay, just going to get you to ask you a question now. Word formation, what do you think? Some students see the stem word and automatically write a related word they know well as their answer. For each of these stem words, which word might be an obvious automatic choice for such a student? So just think about your average student, the first word they would rush into that they know from comfort. Which word would they form from care and worry? Which are the obvious items they're going to choose there? Louise, are you there?
Yes. Okay. So
You
yes, it's the have your say for each of these STEM words: comfort, care, worry. Which word might be an obvious automatic choice for such a student? And we're getting lots of answers.
I can't see it.
Comfortable. No, but
Right.
I'll tell you.
Okay, fine.
Comfortable, careful, worried. Let's see if there are any more. Yeah, that's it.
That's it,
Those
right?
are
And
the, yeah.
that's what I was hoping you'd say, because that's actually, if you were to Google students, that's what they'd say. Comfortable is the one they know. Careful, worried. But let's put it into some kind of context. Sorry, there they are. They're the ones that I thought you would say, and I know because I've done this with students that they say. Now, in the examination, this is from the handbook again. When they see the STEM word at the end of a line, students must not automatically write a related word which they know well as their answer. They need to read the surrounding sentence to decide what the missing word is. Why is that advice in the handbook, the Cambridge handbook? Well, because they know from so many exams that students do exactly that. They just put a word that they know without even thinking about the meaning. So this exercise actually appears in straight to first, but here I'm going to give it to you in the handout to use. There is another similar example in Ready for B2 First, which you can look at later. But in this, I've highlighted words that students need to look at. We enjoyed the film, but, okay, positive, negative, so obviously the answer there is uncomfortable. I had to rewrite my article. Oh dear, negative. The teacher said there were too many mistakes. Well, you don't have careful mistakes, you have careless mistakes. And then the increase in the number of road accidents is a worried problem. Well, problems don't worry, problems are worrying. And that's the answer now. And there are more items like this in the exercise in the handbook. I think 8, maybe 10, not sure. And well, you can try and experiment if you like. I did this with a group of students. I often go in to teach at a local secondary school in Vallecas, which is just along the road from where I live in Madrid. And I gave them this exercise with the words highlighted, but without saying anything. I didn't say, look at the words that are highlighted, just answer this. And for them, it was like, oh, here we go, another exercise. It was a class of about 25 kids from Cuarto de ESO, so about 15, 16. They were preparing to do the first exam, and they just did it in about 2-3 minutes, whatever, right, finished it. And they fell into all the traps, and they just wrote comfortable, careful, and worried. And then you say, well, hang on, let's do it again. And this time when you do it, and then you point out the fact that some of the words are in bold and they need to be very careful. And then they look at that and they say, oh, right, yeah, okay, now I understand. One or two actually did get it right the first time, but I told them to do it individually and in silence, so no communicating, no comparing their answers, just to see how many fell into the trap. Now, it was a bit cruel on my part, perhaps, but it served to show them the need to be careful, and that they knew that I knew what they were going to do. And when they did it the second time, they got most right the second time. Some of them didn't know the word careless, fair enough. But this exercise is there in the handout for you to use with them. As I say, a bit cruel and maybe losing their confidence initially, but the idea is to build their confidence, to build them up, to show them the kind of things they need to be aware of for this part of the first exam. Now, also for Ready for B2 First, in the workbook, we've got a word formation list, which is like the one we've got in the advanced book, Ready for Advanced. There are 9 pages. It's a list of example words for each of the for example, on the right, you can see the noun suffixes, disapproval, maybe it's just be able to read that, disapproval, arrival, so on, ANCE, ENCE, ATIO, and so on. And there are 9 pages of this for adjectives, nouns, for verbs, and so on. It's a list. It's not exhaustive. Not all the possible words that you're ever going to meet in the exam are there, but it's based on many years, 20 years of writing, and a lot of these words have appeared in the past. Doesn't mean to say they'll appear in the future, and doesn't mean to say that other words that would surprise me or surprise you would be tested. So it's not exhaustive, but it is a fairly good guideline, and it will help you in particular, the teacher, if you're thinking about creating your own word formation exercises from the text in your course book, whether it's ready for B2 first or another course there as well. I wouldn't suggest to students that they learn all the words, but it does provide a kind of reference material for them to look at and for you to look at as well. Also, for you as a resource in Quizlet, if you type in Roy Norris as one word in lowercase, you'll find all my Quizlet files. If you're not sure what Quizlet is, I'm sure most of you do, but these are kind of flashcards that you can use, the students can use in their mobiles. You can share the information with them. So all the word formation exercises, not only exercises, but words which appear in those sections that I showed you at the beginning of this little section are in Quizlet. So you can see they're Unit 12, ready for B2 first, 4th edition, nouns, negatives, people, adjectives, adverbs, nouns, another section on nouns there. And then what does it look like? Well, they get these flashcards like this, popular. You can have it on voice if you want. They can have it on voice rather. And they say what they think is the noun from that. This is in the section on nouns, and they click it, and then they check their answer. And you've got generous and generosity, and so on and so forth. So all the words that appear in the students' book of Ready for B2 First are there in the Quizlet flashcards. And if you're using another course, then you could do it for that as well. But they're already there, made for you if you're using Ready for B2 First. You don't have to do anything. It's there, and you can just share them with your students after you do each section, and they can test themselves at home. So they're not learning a list. They're doing it with flashcards, which makes it more enjoyable, dare I say that. Perhaps not fun, but it makes it a little less dull. Okay. Right, last section, got about 10 or so minutes, good. Part 4, keyword transformation. Right, okay, what's this? Well, this is the key to the book, which appears on the first couple of pages of Ready for B2 First, which talks about the contents of the book. And I just wanted to highlight here, this is the first 6 units. If you can see down, there are six units dealt with. It's not complete. It doesn't show you everything that's there, but it does show you that for each unit, and in fact in all 12 units of the book, there is a keyword transformation exercise, which appears in the review pages at the end of each unit. So the keyword transformations are revision exercises in Ready for B2 First, because it kind of tests the language that's been input during the unit. And again, it shows students the kind of structures, the kind of items, phrases, words that are tested in the keyword transformation. So they have a kind of systematic approach, because they're dealing with the grammar structures in the unit, and then at the end of the unit they get a chance to be tested on it in the form of a transformation exercise. And what are those structures, and what is the kind of languages that appears in my course book, and which is based on what appears in the exam? There's a lot of predictability about what sort of things appear in the exam. There's also some unpredictability, which we'll come on to afterwards. So the first one there, the underlined part in red is what students have to write, and the word in bold is the word that they are given, the key word that they are given. So there we're looking at gerunds and infinitives. Here we're looking at comparisons. There are not as many teachers. Here we're looking at necessity. You do not need to. There is no need for you to. Phrasal verb. Present perfect. The first time I eat? No, the first time I have eaten. The word they're given is first. Probability. Futures and probability. The weather is not likely to get better for several days. Reported speech, with an extra little bit there about how to, using the word how, which I often have problems with. This one, well, several things going on with this one. We've got gerund after don't mind, but we've got a passive. That's the main point here. This appears in the unit with passives, but we've got a gerund, we've got a passive, and we've got a prepositional phrase there on their own as well, which was actually one of the items in my exercise on the typical words in open close. So you've got three things happening in that particular transformation. Next one, tricky conditional with the word unless, always causes problems. We've got a bit of a negative in there as well. And then the typical wish kind of transformation. So those are the kind of predictable areas. Some transformations are predictable. There's always something in there which students will recognize from their course book. However, before I go on to the howevers, they're also on Quizlet. Again, look for Roy Norris and you'll find the Ready for B2 First 4th edition students book transformations. And you get in this form. This is from the first unit. Helen is not usually so pessimistic. It is, and it is not like Helen to be. And you'll see there that an advert crept in. I don't pay for the special version. So I get the adverts. I tried to get a screen grab without the advert, but that one crept in. Sorry about that. But anyway, those transformations are there in Quizlet. Now, about this, however, that I started to mention, your course book, whatever your course book, will never be able to deal with all the language that appears in the exam. And that just remind you about what I said before, that they're not going to get 100%, or most students will not get 100%. So there will be items that they find tricky, which will catch them out. These phrasal verbs I've found in Cambridge material. I'd love to catch up on your news. Now that's not in Ready for B2 First. Actually, although it is in the first, that text I showed you right at the beginning, which I use for the multiple choice closes, we have catch up on your sleep. So that's in there. So got that one. But I can't get everything in. It's just impossible. You need a huge course book and it just would be impractical. So be prepared for things. The students need to be prepared for ones that they just won't know. Don't lose confidence. That's my message there. Here, other lexis. To the best of my knowledge, these are not in Ready for B2 First. Lucy didn't say a word to me. There was no sign on. At your disposal. Keep an eye on. But it just highlights this need for students to be reading or getting as much exposure to English as possible. Hopefully some students will have seen this, but if they're just using their course book, even just using their course book, they're not going to get everything. So the more language they're exposed to, the more kind of text they're looking at, the more chance they have of doing well in this section, in this use of English. What's next? So I'm saying read as much as possible. I'm aware that there are limitations in time, but don't lose confidence if there is something they don't know, because there always will be something they do. What do Cambridge say? They say, in preparing for this part of the paper, give your students practice in paraphrasing. This might include rewriting sentences from text, saying things again in other words, as well as working on lexical synonyms and grammatical transformations. Now, practice in paraphrasing. This is just something I'm so keen on, and I find so important, saying things again in other words. So Here is a text. This is from Unit 7. It's on Black Friday. It's a unit on shopping. And it's a part 6, where they have to put the missing sentences in, gap text. And there's also this page here. This is the kind of thing that was in the 3rd edition, but it's here again in the 4th with different texts. And let's focus and see what there is. It's called paraphrasing and recording vocabulary. What I'm saying there is paraphrasing is relevant in all areas of the first exam. It's relevant in the reading and listening tasks. The multiple choice and multiple matching questions often paraphrase what is written in the text. So paraphrasing is not just in the transformations, it's in the reading and listening text. We'll see how that works in the reading in a minute. In the writing and speaking papers, avoid repeating the same language and use a wide range of vocabulary and structures. And in fact, for the speaking paper, Cambridge in the handbook say your students should be encouraged to paraphrase when they do not know a word. And then, of course, in part 4, the transformations test your ability to paraphrase. So it's there in the whole exam. So it's just such an important sub-skill, which has very, very positive effect for your students. So what I've done here, if you look there, I write a sentence. People associate the biggest shopping day of the year with chaos in shops. And then I write another sentence, which is a paraphrase of that with one word missing. And in this case, it's retail's biggest day is known for in-store chaos. Look at the next one. The press love it because of the chaotic scenes that usually occur in the shopping aisles. That's the paraphrase that I have given. But in the text, it appears as it is a media favourite because of the outbreaks of chaos that commonly erupt in the shopping aisles. And then they can go back to the text and check their answers in the text. It's giving, all they have to do is put one word in. And you can see in the other ones there, I've got the phrasal verb bring about, place a strain on, and another phrasal verb caught on, which could be tested. But the point is, it's using the text to create activities on paraphrasing. And then it goes on. This is another exercise on the same page. Paraphrasing is a useful way to record vocabulary. So I'm taking you back now to that quote from the handbook, which said students should keep vocabulary records and record as much detail as possible. Well, what I'm suggesting here is that another powerful type of vocabulary record is to paraphrase the following sentences and record both sentences in your vocabulary notebook. I'll show you how in a minute. So there you've got Black Friday takes place each year towards the end of November. This time, that's the actual sentence from the text. That's not my paraphrase of a sentence from the text. That's the sentence in the text, and I'm getting students to try to paraphrase that. They can use some of the same words, but they can try and use different words if possible. It's difficult. It's very hard for students, particularly at B2 first level. So don't expect too much. You get lots of support in the teacher's book for this, but be patient, be aware that it's not an easy task. And I know that from my studying German, which I'm doing at the moment. Sometimes I can do it, and I think, oh, I know another way of saying that. But other times it's tough. It's a hard skill. So don't expect too much from your students. And if they do manage to do something, praise them. Don't pick out the negatives in their efforts. Pick out the positives, because it's hard, but it's very valuable. And there is the kind of vocabulary record. Now, it's a bit of a mess, my handwriting. But if you look on the left, Black Friday takes place each year towards the end of November. And on the right, there's the paraphrase, Black Friday occurs every year near the end of November. And then you've got 2 for the price of 1. You've got some nice vocabulary, takes place, looking down, looks here to stay, call in sick, extending their opening hours, has been credited with. And you've got another way of saying it, 2 for the price of 1. And you can extend this idea as well by exploiting the language that's in multiple matching readings, because often multiple matching readings have a lot of paraphrasing. Not only paraphrasing, as we'll see. Here's a text on veganism, and I'm nearly finished now. Just about 3 or 4 minutes to go. Text on veganism. Different people talking about going vegan. A lot of teenagers are going vegetarian, some going vegan. my daughters have, one's vegetarian, the other one is thinking of going vegetarian. I just hope they don't go vegan, because that will cause a lot of upset in working out menus and so on. But anyway, that's my problem. Going vegan. There's two people, Jack and Sarah. Let's have a look at Jack. Now, this is one of the questions. There's an extract from the text there. Now that I'm a vegan, I'm very much aware of the extra effort involved for non-vegans, yes, who invite me around for a meal. I always offer to take a dessert, and the other dinner guests are invariably amazed at how delicious it is. The question, the prompt that students are given, which person states the following, is people are always surprised by how tasty vegan food can be, which is a paraphrase of what's in the text. They're invariably amazed. They're always surprised. How delicious it is by how tasty vegan food can be. So you could take those two out and put them side and record them in the notebook. Okay, it takes time to write them down, but there's some good language there, and there that becomes your vocabulary record. It's not difficult words, but it's words which can be reused and which might appear in this exam. I tried to put his, well, this is Sarah. My dad had the biggest problem. He kept sending me articles warning of the pitfalls. I tried to put his mind at rest. Look at the paraphrase below. My attempts to reassure someone. And then the next part is not paraphrasing, by telling him I was taking supplements, etc., and then had the opposite effect. That's a summary of what's happening in the text. So it's not always paraphrasing, but often it is. So those two could go in my vocabulary notebook. I tried to put his mind at rest, and whatever it was, my attempts to reassure him. The teacher's book gives you help with this. It tells you where the answers have been found, so you don't, when students are doing this reading, the actual words that are used are there in the text in the teacher's book. It's very easy for you to locate them. And then there's your vocabulary record again. If you look at the top, I received a great deal of advice. I got loads of useful tips. My attempts to reassure him, I tried to put his mind at rest. They can create vocabulary records from paraphrasing. So you're dealing with vocabulary records, you're dealing with paraphrasing, you're helping to prepare students for the keyword transformations and all aspects of the use of English paper. And that is it. Okay, thank you very, very much for listening. Those are the 4 parts. The handout you should be getting soon with those activities in. And if you want to send any questions, I'm going to click some buttons now, and you can send in questions if you want to ask me them, and I'll try to answer them in the time that remains to us. So I'll just ask Louise to come back. There you are. Right.
Yes, I'm back. Thank you so much, Roy. That was excellent. Okay. Really, really good. And I just want to say what you say about building students' confidence and not focusing on getting everything right. As you say, students wouldn't be at the right level if they got everything right. They probably should be doing a higher preparing for. Try. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
But being aware, just being aware that not to lose confidence if they don't. It is a very, many students look at this as the most difficult part of the paper, or certainly have the most problems. The perception may not be the reality, but the reality is they do have a lot of problems with this. But they can always make it up in other papers, of course. But we want to to prepare, building their confidence, preparing them as much as we can. And given that there are time limitations, we'd love them to be reading a lot, but just using as much as possible.
Exactly. Exploiting the text, first of all, the reading text, exploiting them for all the things that you usually do. And then, as you say, looking at creating text that will allow us to focus more on the type of activities that they will encounter in the exam, absolutely, and raising awareness. So we've got some comments. Deborah says, thanks very much, Roy. Great ideas, as always. She's greeting us from Granada. Hi, Deborah. Another comment, I love the vocabulary record. However, what do they do with it once they've made the initial recording? How do you keep it alive? Or is it that that's their responsibility at home? It's a good
Yeah,
question.
yes, but I think the question's fair enough. I think as a teacher, you've got to the danger is that will just stay there. And in fact, I have this is my German vocabulary book, and I haven't looked at certain pages for quite a while. I have to confess. So I'm a very motivated language learner, and I've got this is a page there. It's full of writing, but they're paraphrases.
Yes.
Which were very relevant at one point, and I need to go back to that. And having now spoken about it, I will. I'll look at it this afternoon, I promise. But no, the danger is that it will just get left there. You do need to keep going back to it. So that's the value of this kind of
Yes.
Well, encourage them to go back to their vocabulary books. Maybe spend time in the class. You can bring your vocabulary book if they're doing it. If all your students are doing this, and that's another point, but if they are, then you could have a kind of revision activity at the beginning of the class, get your vocabulary books, test each other, cover up half or test yourselves. And one person reads out, can you paraphrase this? Not from the top of your head, but because you've already studied that before. So I think the point is very valid. It could just sit in the vocabulary book. You as a teacher can encourage them. Of course, it's up to them eventually. It's up to me as well, with my German. But you're halfway there, more than halfway there, if you've actually done that in the first place. And I'm not saying do it all the time because it can get tedious. Like anything, don't overdo these things. But it works for me with my German, and it works for students as well. For that, as an alternative, just the typical kind of one word. This word means that, which is also valid. It's not the only way of recording.
Yes, and Charlotte is asking how she can find out about your next online event. So you've got followers.
The next online event is January June, not January, no, June the 3rd.
Yes.
June the 3rd is a kind of an interview that I'm being interviewed.
You're doing
exactly. And then in the IATEFL conference, but I think that's quite expensive, so I'm not sure if you want to pay for that. But there's the IATEFL, which comes at the end of June.
Okay,
excellent. Spain, no, I don't think we've got anything lined up for Spain yet.
No, but until next year, of course. And lots of really positive comments. Thank you so much for your great ideas, very useful ideas and tips indeed. Also, thanks. I was not aware of the importance of paraphrasing in the different parts of the exam, so that person feels really that they've gained new insights. Rachel from, sorry. Yes.
No, I was going to say, can't emphasise. In fact, I've done a talk in the past on paraphrasing the whole thing, but that, in a nutshell, you've got it there. What I've said, but anything you do on paraphrasing is very, very important, very valid. But again, particularly at B2 first, be patient. Be patient, and it's better, often initially give them the paraphrase and ask them to find the equivalent. And then when they feel confident, turn it around.
Exactly. And Rachel from Bilbao says, wonderful to see you and hear your ideas, Roy. Your enthusiasm is contagious. Thank you.
Good.
Yes, and other comments. Great session. Thanks so much to Roy and Macmillan. Well, thank you and for being here. And also, as you said, they don't have enough time to read. What type of additional reading would you suggest? I mean, obviously you have spoken about exploiting to the maximum the material in the course book. Is there anything else you would suggest?
What can you read? I think the answer to that is read something, and again, from personal experience with my German, read something that you're interested in. I'm very interested in birds, and I'm now going out and taking photos of birds. And I've always been, since a boy, been interested in birds. And just recently in a class, a kind of a light went on in my head. I had to look at a text and I had to watch a video online about bird watching in Germany. And I learned so much, not the names of the birds, which is one thing that's very specific and not particularly useful for because most people's eyes just glaze over when you start talking about names of birds. But words like, the bird does this to defend, sings to defend its territory, the word to defend, yeah? Or to attract a female. So defending and attracting verbs that came into it. And as I did more and more of this, I just got so interested, and I started reading and watching more stuff on birds in German. I thought, I should have done this before. So I think my first piece of advice is read something that interests you. That will get you involved. If you're starting to read, it's like when you pick up a book and you're not. I'm reading a book at the moment, and I'm at page 140, and I've been reading it for about 3-4 weeks, and it's just not really interested. I think I should put it down and pick up something that does to get me back reading. So I think the first thing is, read something that interests you. Beware of novels. I mean, the multiple choice reading part 5 does often have an extract from a novel, but it's often toned down. Novels can be, depending on the novel, can be quite complex language, which is beyond the level. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that unless you've got one which you're really interested in, and it will give you, that's practicing the skill of guessing the meaning of unknown words from context. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's newspapers and magazines, but anything which you're interested in, it could be a news item which is interesting. If you're, for example, recently we've had the elections here in Madrid, and I was reading articles in The Guardian. It was reported, events in Spain often get reported in British newspapers. So try and have a look around. The Guardian's quite good for that. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, there's lots of material out there, but as you say, I think motivation, people's interest is key, isn't it?
Yeah.
More really positive comments, Roy. Thank you so much for such useful ideas. Greetings from Galicia.
Well, I might go there on holiday, not Galicia.
Good idea, especially in the summer. It's cooler.
Yeah.
All very clear. Thank you for sharing all your ideas, Roy. Thank you very much, Roy.
Actually, all very clear. Something is there. I think really, I mean, I'm a bit of an obsessive, and I think if you're preparing for exams, you need to be. I think it's a good idea to be organised. Very organised yourself. And be clear about what it is that's in the exam. Be clear about what you want to achieve with your students. If you're not clear in your own head about what's involved, then it just becomes a bit of a ball of confusion for students.
Yes.
And I think projecting that confidence. If you're organised, if you understand what the exam's about, if you know what you want to achieve, then you can transmit that to your students, and they will go with you as a teacher. But if you're just kind of walking in and saying, well, let's just do the text on page, which I'm afraid, unfortunately, it does happen. Let's just do the text and do that for homework, and then not show any interest. It's not going to take the students very far. But you being organised, being confident about what's involved, will rub off on your students. Rub off on, lovely phrase of verb. Okay.
Yes, there is a question about the reading and use of English part 1. The person is asking, should we as teachers explain the reasons for the right answers, and also why the other 3 are not correct, the distractors? The person says, my students seem more interested in the incorrect ones, and sometimes we get stuck there.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, if you've got the time, well, it's great that they're interested, isn't it? Because yes, I mean, the answer to that, the simple answer is, do dwell on why the ones are wrong, because we've already seen that today. I did that for a couple, but you'll notice that I did it quite quickly. I didn't dwell on it too long. I didn't give for example, there was rather, instead, and sooner, and sooner was also grammatically possible, but I didn't dwell. I said, well, that's preferences, and moved on quickly. And I understand that that's a problem in the classroom as well. You want to go into these things, but you get stuck, and you can spend ages and ages. So I think, I understand the question perfectly. but it's great that they're interested. So I think, maybe you should say, okay, for this exercise, I mean, this probably what I would do is say, look, we'll just look at two of these, or three, or whatever you've got time for, and not all of them, because you'll just get bogged down and you won't move on. But I think choose you before, when you're going to go through it, before you go through it, choose two which you think illustrate a couple of very important points which will take them forward, rather than dwelling. I mean, for example, the one about dinosaurs. We could have spent hours looking at the difference between gathered, combined, united, and whatever else was there. And it is difficult. It's not easy. So you before the class, be organised. Pick out the two and say, look, I'm only going to deal with these two. We haven't got time because I want to deal with other aspects. And that's, if you've got any other problems, well, come to me if you like. And if they're really keen and really interested, they will. But, I understand that question perfectly. Just limit it. But encourage it, because it's great. It means they're thinking along the right lines. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And just one last comment from Christina, apart from saying congratulations and that she liked the talk very much, she makes a point which I think is worth pointing out, is that students shouldn't limit themselves to the first exam or any other official exam or level, but that English has no limits. And they should feel encouraged to read any kind of book and article.
I agree completely. I mean, I'm just working within the restriction of, I know that there are time limitations and motivational limitations in some students as well. So that comment is, sorry, who made the comment?
Christina.
Right, Christina, I agree with you perfectly. And if they are reading outside, that's brilliant. I just know from past that teachers throw their arms up in the air and say they're not reading, but if they are, fantastic. And actually, I didn't comment on it, but there was just a small example of that in the shopping Black Friday text. The word outbreaks came in, and it's in that exercise. Outbreaks is probably not going to appear in a B2 first exam. It's going to be it's a C1 word. There's in fact it appears in an exercise in Ready for Advanced, but so what? I mean, you don't have to be limited by what's in the exam. You have to know what words, what structures might appear in the exam. You need to have that. But I agree with you completely, Christina. If they're going to go beyond those limits, just let them fly and read as much as they want. And please do it, because it's lovely when you hear students, enthusing about language and reading. It's the joy. Unfortunately, few and far between sometimes, not always. But if you've got a class of students like that, wow, that'd be great.
Yes, that's so true. Okay, well, thank you very much, Roy. I'm going to introduce Sarah Collins now. Roy will disappear for a minute, but he'll come back later to say goodbye to you all. Good morning, Sarah. Hello.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly. So Sarah is the sales representative at Macmillan Education Iberia, and she's going to give us a short presentation of this new fourth edition of the Ready for B2 First course. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Louise, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and big thanks to Roy Norris for his amazing webinar. And now we're going to look a little bit more at the fourth edition of Roy's best-selling book for Macmillan, Ready for B2 First. The Ready For series has been helping students prepare for their exams for 20 years. And this revised fourth edition of the well-loved Ready for B2 First continues to provide the in-depth exam training for which the course is known, but has been updated with improved page design, book layout, and new innovative digital features for both teachers and students. Now, Ready for First has been a comprehensive, reliable preparation course for 20 years because of its range of activities which are designed to systematically develop skills for success at the Cambridge English B2 First exam. So we've made sure to keep the features that you love, such as the Ready For sections, which offer effective exam advice, and a look at the exam tasks all together as in the real exam, and review sections in every unit to consolidate what students have learned. The units themselves are full of exam tasks in line with the B2 exam requirements to give students as much practice as possible in the style of the real exam, including use of English sections, which help students prepare for this challenging exam paper. So what's new? Over half the readings and listening tasks are new to include up-to-date and motivating content. And the new design of the book is attractive and contemporary with lighter pages and a clear lesson path. The beginning of each unit states the objectives very clearly, including the key language and exam tasks covered so that students know exactly what they'll be learning and practicing. In addition to the attractive photography, the unit openers engage students from the get-go with speaking tasks to jump into the topic, generate interest, and personalize the topic. New listening tasks have been included, while others have been re-recorded to be aligned with the difficulty of the Cambridge B2 First exam, including more regional accents, faster speeds, and more distractors, to get students as ready as possible for their Cambridge listening exam. A brand new addition to Ready for B2 First is the pronunciation section at the end of the units. This is to help students gain confidence, communicate effectively, and also gets them ready for their collaborative tasks on their exam to improve their pronunciation and interaction marks. Another important aspect is that Ready for B2 First has a more compact syllabus than previous editions, going from 14 to 12 units, redistributing the material throughout the book. Ready for B2 First includes exam preparation throughout the units, but we also have specific Ready for sections between units that specialize in a particular test of the B2 exam. There's a Ready for Use of English, a Ready for Speaking, a Ready for Listening, Ready for Reading, and Ready for Writing to give students a global view and experience of that test paper and go into more detail about exam strategy and what to expect in the real exam. The book is full of strategy advice with the well-loved what to expect in the exam, how to go about it, and don't forget boxes throughout the pages of the units that help both students and teachers gain confidence in how to approach exam tasks effectively and successfully to gain maximum marks on the big day. Students can also find support for the language they're learning by looking at the new Ready for Grammar section. This gives students thorough explanations of the grammar they're learning in the units on one side of the page, and then practice on the other side to give students more opportunities to master that grammar point. We can also find additional practice of each unit's language and skills in the updated Ready for B2 First workbook, as well as interactive digital practice, allowing students to really utilize their time outside of class effectively and continue working towards their goals. Now, considering how much our classes and classroom environments have changed over recent years and how our needs are still constantly changing, Ready for B2 First is a fully flexible course, which can be used in face-to-face classes, distance and online learning, hybrid settings, or any of these combinations to meet the needs of both teachers and students. There's a variety of different digital and paper components, which can be mixed and matched to be ready for wherever and however we need to teach. As with the Macmillan 360-degree promise, we're here to help make sure you can teach great classes no matter where you need to be and continue supporting you. With all this in mind, Ready for B2 First has its own students app with on-the-go practice so that students can quickly access their digital English resources easily wherever they go, on all of their devices, and continue to practice for their exam. Students have additional interactive activities for the language seen in class in order to be able to review it on the go, as well as practice for exam-style tasks with 60 Are You Ready quickfire questions and 2 full practice tests. At Macmillan, we want to make teachers' lives easier. Teachers have the Macmillan Education Teachers app, which allows us to prepare and present our lessons and have a learning management system at the same time. With the Teachers app, we have our Teachers Resource Center with additional resources and multimedia, a test generator to create tests to check students' progress, a homework manager for us to be able to assign homework to our students if desired, and of course, our digital books to teach from, with all the media embedded so we can play our audios, check answers, write comments and notes, and zoom into components as needed. To sum up, for students, we have the blended option, which means that students can have their paper books with their digital versions included and their Students app. Or we can go 100% digital with a digital students book with app and a digital workbook. The additional components for teachers include the Teachers app and the Interleave Teachers book. So one page is the teacher's guide, and the other is the student's book with all the answers written in. And this contains step-by-step guidance, including teaching tips and guidelines, answer keys, ideas to review or extend lessons to give teachers all the support they need. For more information about Ready for B2 First, or to see sample units, please do check out our website or get in touch with your sales rep. We'd be very happy to show you the material and see how it would work for your center. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. That's great.
Thank you.
Very clear. We'll just give people an opportunity to ask any questions or send in any comments now. And that you have the chat box available on your screen. If anybody has a question to ask Sarah, please do so now. Avail of the opportunity. If there's anything that you want more information about, please do ask, or any comments. We'd love to hear from you. I'll just give you a couple of seconds to do that. I think the on-the-go practice, the app is really interesting. Having that, opportunity to practice outside of the class. Once, as Roy said, that all the work is done in class.
Mm-hmm.
The intensive, the exploitation of the text, etc. But being able to use that format outside of class is very good. It's very flexible, isn't it?
And it's really, really handy, especially if you have some downtime during the day. For example, you're watching TV, or you're waiting in line, or you're on the subway, on the metro. It's really handy because you just whip out your phone and you can practice some of the language that you've been learning in class, working on some of the exam questions, so you can get your practice in constantly, and you can repeat activities as well, try to improve your scores.
Exactly.
So it's really, really useful.
Yes, actually, somebody is asking, can you tell us a bit more about the app and the teachers' resources? A little bit more information on that?
Well, if we're thinking about the Teachers app is the platform that we have to teach from. So this is our digital book, and then it has all of the multimedia embedded into it. So you don't have to look in 3 million different places. You have everything in the same place, and you just click and it appears. And it's what you can use to teach your classes, on a day-to-day basis, but you also have the option of creating classes for students to join. And that way, as they're doing any of their digital interactive activities, you can see their progress. And you can actually see where they've made mistakes. You can see what they're doing really well. And this can help you tailor the class a little bit more. So if you notice that students are struggling, for example, with the listening questions, you might say, oh, maybe we should work on part 2 listening a little bit more in class. The same with the grammar and the vocab. So it allows you to see, maybe we need to cover reported speech again, or maybe we need to do a review of the passive. It gives you a better idea of how to teach your classes or what you can do to help students.
Excellent. Okay. Any more questions? I'm just checking the comments, just saying thank you very much for a wonderful webinar. It was very clear. I have seen a question about people are delighted that the 4th edition for Ready for B2 First is out, and people are very keen to find out more about it. And some people are asking about when will Ready for Advanced C1 come out?
Next year, next February.
Next year,
It's
so watch this space.
It's already in advanced stages, very advanced stages, and it'll be ready for February.
Excellent.
It'll be there. It's following the similar kind of pattern that we've seen there with the new edition of ready for first, ready for B2 first, very dynamic, very attractive looking, easy on the eye, and much less crowded than in past editions, with moving the grammar, some of the grammar exercises to the end of the book. And the design is lovely. And so, yeah, that'll be out February. That's mostly my colleague, my writing colleague, Amanda French, who's been involved with that. I can't do two at the same time. So she's been doing a lot of the rewriting and updates for that. So, yeah, February 2022 will be there.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. Great. Okay, well, I think that's it in terms of comments and questions. Thank you so much, Roy. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for sharing your insights, your experience.
Thank you for coming over
really.
Yes.
Yes, and thank you, Sarah, for your very clear presentation. And thank you to everybody out there. It's been, as Roy said, for being here, for taking the time out of your schedules, and for sharing your ideas in the chat. We've had lots of comments and questions and interest, and people are excited by this new fourth edition, and they're also excited about the C1 as well, which will come out in February of next year. So look out for that. And just to remind you that we'll send you the recording and the handouts, as well as the certificate of attendance next week. And now we're going to launch the Survey Monkey questionnaire. There are questions in there about the event, the talk, and also an important question about if you're interested in finding out more about this new fourth edition of the Ready for B2 First. Please answer that question. We'll get in contact with you and hope to see you soon. And yes, see you all shortly. And just to wish you all the very best possible end to this year's course. It's been difficult, but you've done a great job. And I wish you all the best for the summer holidays, which I'm sure you're all very much looking forward to and need before we start 2022. Okay, take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
See you soon. Bye. Take care. Bye.